In business today, three things to know. First, reversing course on mortgage lending. The U.S. government loosens rules in an effort to juice up the housing market. Have we seen this movie before? Then, bankrolling terror. How does Nigeria's Boko Haram get its money to fund kidnapping, bombings, and mayhem in Africa's largest economy? And where is Casey? Radio legend Casey Kasem is missing amid a battle between his wife and his children. Is an $80 million empire behind the mystery? Arise Exchange starts now. Hello, everyone. I'm Andrew Schmertz. Worried that the housing market is about to crater, the Obama administration is preparing new rules to make mortgage lending easier. This would be a 180-degree change in course for the U.S. mortgage business. Following the housing collapse in 2008, the government issued regulations that made borrowing money much tougher. Those rules included mandates for better credit scores among borrowers and higher down payments. The days of the interest-only, no-down payment loans at the time were over. But with the housing market showing signs of stress, the administration appears ready to loosen the reins. How much, and will it help? Bob Moulton is the president of the American Mortgage Group. He has been in this business for a very long time. Bob, welcome to Arise Exchange.
Thank you for having me,
So
Andrew.
Historically, how tight have the rules been over the past couple of years?
Well, when you look at the last 10 years, 10 years ago, underwriting was very, very lenient and very loose. Anyone, if they breathe, could get a job. In 08,
in some cases, they weren't breathing.
In some cases, they weren't breathing. In 08, when the housing market crashed, the government went to the opposite end of the spectrum. Mm-hmm. They eliminated a lot of the no-income check mortgages. They eliminated interest-only mortgages. They required higher credit scores. They required a lower debt-to-income ratio, which means...
And that's the key. So debt-to-income ratio is really, I mean, we could argue you shouldn't borrow money with no money down. We could argue that you should be paying more than just interest. But the debt-to-income ratio is really what's killed us.
Correct. We were able to underwrite files with, say, a 53% debt-to-income ratio. As of January 1st of this year, a new rule came out, which is part of the 2010 Dodd-Frank bill, where the debt-to-income ratio can only be 43% of a borrower's income.
And Dodd-Frank is part of the banking regulations that are being phased in over several years.
Correct.
I know you can't necessarily talk percentages, but how much of the people taking out of the market because of that debt-to-income ratio?
I'd say out of 10 people that call in, you're probably losing 70% of those people that don't qualify.
70%?
Not only because of debt to income, because they're upside down in their mortgages or their credit score is not high enough. In the day, we can write loans with credit scores as low as, say, 500. Now those credit scores have gotten a lot higher in order for someone to qualify for a mortgage.
Okay, before we talk about what the proposed changes are, the argument, though, was that too many people were buying homes who should not have been buying homes, that they could not afford it and got us into this mess, and that we needed the rules. Did you agree?
I think we needed the rules, but not as far as the government went. And they're still imposing rules on the loan officers that are still in the industry. Mm-hmm. The changes that are coming into effect on a 4-year pilot program in the next couple of months are something that's long overdue, and it's a pushback of the Dodd-Frank bill. Okay, so it's something that advocates, should appreciate.
So let's talk a little bit about what they're proposing now.
What they're proposing is credit counseling for FHA loans. The average FHA loan is $180,000 in
federal housing.
Correct, the Federal Housing Administration. So the average FHA loan size is $180,000. If a borrower who's a first-time home buyer goes to credit counseling, they'll reduce the mortgage insurance premium that they're required to pay over the life of the loan. However, these first-time home buyers, they're able to put 3.5% down to buy a house, which is great because Dodd-Frank wanted a 20% down payment.
So they've lowered this significantly on how much you have to put down.
Correct. So they can still buy a house with 3.5% down. But those first-time home buyers, quite frequently, are ridden with student loans. Yep. And it's very hard for them to buy a house first time around because 43% of sales right now are cash buyers. They're cash buyers from investors overseas, or they're buyers that are buying houses that have sold houses.
And that's really the big concern, that we've seen this pop in the real estate market because of this artificial economy going on. Too many cash buyers, people buying them for investments, not your typical home buyer. The typical home buyer has not been participating.
That's correct. The cash buyers are the ones that are inflating prices right now. It's the seller's market. There's limited inventory, and these sellers are holding out for the cash buyers. They don't have to go for a mortgage. They don't have to wait the 2 to 3 month process that's required for someone to go to a bank and get themselves approved. So the cash buyers are artificially inflating the market right now.
Part of this change is also, though, going to bring back more securitization of these loans, that the banks are going to once again be able to divide them up and sell them to third parties. Is that a good idea?
Well, it'll open the market. It will help rates, because right now Fannie and Freddie are buying the loans up to $417,000, and they're looking for pools of investors and pools of banks to participate in the risk. But no one is really jumping up to the plate right now, and Fannie and Freddie still has a large portion of that. So there seems to be some thinking where the trend should change, and private investors and banks should be sharing in the risk pool.
So finally, how do you think this is going to change your business in helping to facilitate these loans?
Well, it's the beginning of what will be a turnaround, because right now the last couple of years has been very, very tough. Volume is down significantly in the industry. It's down 40% across the country in terms of the number of applications year to date this year versus last year. And that's because people are having a hard time getting mortgages and getting qualified. So this is a step in the right direction. Hopefully it's a sign of things to come, where things will loosen up and get the housing market back on track.
Bob Moulton, president of the American Mortgage Group. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Turning now to some economic news this Wednesday, a cautionary note on inflation. The U.S. Producer Price Index rose 0.6%, the biggest gain since September of 2012, and an indication of inflation. The PPI measures inflation at the wholesale level. Meantime, U.S. equities pulled back today. Let's take a look at the final numbers. The Dow Jones Industrial Average closing down more than 100 points to 16,613.97. The S&P 500 closing below 1,900 to 1883.53. And the NASDAQ down as well to 4,163. Some of the top stocks we're watching today. Sales at Macy's fell by 1.6% for the quarter. That missed analyst expectations of a 1.3% gain. But earnings rose to 60 cents a share, up from 55 cents a year ago. Macy's closing down a penny. Walmart has agreed to settle claims from several families of the victims who died in a 2011 listeria outbreak linked to a Colorado cantaloupe farm. Details of the settlement are confidential. Walmart down 40 cents. And Citigroup has fired 4 top executives and 7 other employees who the bank says failed to do enough to protect the company from fraud at its Mexican unit, Banamex. Citigroup closing up. That should be down 30 cents to 47.12. And looking at commodities, gold up and oil up 45 cents to 102.15 a barrel. The Islamic militant group Boko Haram has been getting what it wants lately: publicity for kidnapping as many as 300 schoolgirls and killing hundreds of Nigerians. The group, whose name means Western education is a sin, has been around for a while, but only since kidnapping the school children has it received worldwide attention. So where does Boko Haram get its money to fund its main business of terrorism? Omoyele Sowore is the publisher of SaharaReporters.com. Thank you so much for joining us here today.
Thank you.
Let's talk a little bit about Boko Haram and how it gets its money, because in the articles I've read, it's a really big mystery how this group is funded.
Well, they're engaged in a number of ways of raising money. One of them, measureless bank robbery.
Bank robbery.
Yes.
Good old-fashioned bank robbery.
Yes, they've robbed lots of banks, to the extent that most banks are closed down because of Boko Haram in the northeastern part of Nigeria. Recently, they made a big haul, and that was when they abducted tourists from France and Cameroon. They got about $4 million from that transaction alone. That's a lot of money, as you can imagine, for a terror group like Boko Haram. And I would imagine that they get financing from regional groups that are like them. And what we don't know is how much of global terrorist financing comes to Boko Haram at this point.
And it appears that they're getting better tools, meaning their weapons have been upgraded, that their tactics have been upgraded, their vehicles have been upgraded. And running this organization is expensive, isn't it? Because they come back and forth, for example, between the border of Cameroon a lot.
Yes, but you would be surprised that most of the weapons they have and have been using were actually weapons they carted away from Nigerian troops each time they attacked barracks. Boko Haram attacked a small a small unit on February 18, and they took away from them 200 bombs. Each of those bombs are capable of, firing about 3,000 meters. I'm not a military person, yep. But these are pretty powerful tools. And I can imagine that when they make a lot of money, they also buy weapons from across the borders because they're creating their own country. They're creating a country taken out of Chad, Niger, Nigeria, and Cameroon.
That's right.
And Cameroon already said yesterday Boko Haram is destabilizing Cameroon the same way it's destabilizing northeast of Nigeria.
Well, and then that's a concern that Cameroon hasn't been as helpful as possible. Where are they getting the weapons from? Who is supplying? Who are the arms dealers?
Well, they have arms dealers that are supplying the same armed groups that had been in Chad and Niger. These are countries that have failed to a large extent. And it is the black hole of sales of weapons for Boko Haram. It's the easiest black market for weaponry for Boko Haram. Well, and I can imagine because of corruption in the Nigerian army or military itself, they will be selling weapons. They were selling weapons to Niger Delta militants.
I was going to ask you, how much support are they getting from within Nigeria as well, and from maybe from the population itself?
I would imagine that at this time they have very, very little support. But they've gotten to a point where they are so powerful, it's that you support them or you die. And they have been able to prove that several times. But I don't see the local population in Nigeria who are bearing the brunt of Boko Haram's militancy or brutality supporting them at this point.
Take me to the individual member of Boko Haram. Is this, with lacking a better word, their full-time job, or are they members of society in sort of this shadow group as well?
Oh, you can imagine that they're doing so well, this will be more than a full-time job. These guys are, I mean, if you have 234 kids, girls to take care of, you'll be very, very busy. And they have to, in addition to that, attack barracks, they have to attack markets, they have to attack villages almost on a daily basis. They just attacked an Abuja bus station.
It's an organized crime unit, basically.
Absolutely, it's organized crime that's driven by hate, and of course religious ideology, fanatical religious ideology.
Is there evidence that there's state-sponsored terrorism at all? When you look at other terrorist groups around the world, you could point to some countries that give them money. Anything going on here?
I don't think so. The reason why I don't think so is if that was happening, it would have been clear by now that there's a particular state, a rogue state behind Boko Haram. But you can imagine, even religious leaders in Saudi Arabia and other places have been condemning the abduction of the girls. It does mean that they don't support. There's no state that we know of.
And that makes it probably a little bit harder to pressure them because there's no state to go after. Omoyele, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate you coming in. Coming up, if you know the phrase, a long-distance dedication, then you know who Casey Kasem is. The question tonight is, where is Casey Kasem? You're watching Arise Exchange.
News can definitely be improved when reflecting diversity.
A lot of mainstream news, they don't dive into it.
Who wants to hear about negativity all the time?
They only show what they think people want to know and not what people really should know.
World-based stories, that's what I enjoy the most.
I think diversity of news is important to the world so that everybody will be aware of their surroundings and what is happening today.
Arise News, every culture, every angle.
Welcome back to Arise Exchange. Time now for our business ticker stories making news around the world. President Barack Obama in New York City today making an appeal for more funding to revamp the nation's infrastructure. He was actually in upstate New York. He appeared at the aging Tappan Zee Bridge about 20 miles north of the city. The president blasted Congress for failing to approve transportation legislation for road projects. The White House has offered a 4-year, $302 billion transport spending plan paid for by ending some business tax breaks as one solution to the problem. Children, some as young as 7 years old, are working on U.S. tobacco farms under what is being called hazardous conditions. A report from Human Rights Watch details findings from interviews with more than 140 children working in North Carolina, Kentucky, Virginia, and Tennessee. It found long hours spent picking through nicotine and pesticide-laced tobacco plants, often making the children sick. Now, while most of the work is considered legal, the International Rights Group is pushing the U.S. government and tobacco companies to work to protect children from hazardous harvesting conditions. PIMCO has lost another $30 billion as investors continued withdrawing funds in the first 3 months of the year. That's after investors already took out $109 billion in just the second half of last year. Analysts believe it's being fueled by concerns over the company's leadership after CEO Mohamed El-Harran announced he was leaving the company over disagreements with PIMCO founder Bill Gross. That's a situation that's getting uglier. It may be hard to believe, but airline passengers in North America are said to be the happiest ever by flying. According to a survey from J.D. Power and Associates, U.S. and Canadian airlines say consumers are more satisfied than ever before for the second year in a row. Alaska Airlines was the most highly rated North American airline for the 7th year in a row, followed by Delta, American, and Delta and American came in third. And you've heard of the business practice, the customer is always right. Well, maybe not so much. Get this. A study out of Southern Methodist University in Vancouver found customers at luxury stores are more likely to buy expensive items if they've had a negative experience with the staff. That's right. Apparently, customers who were treated rudely were more likely to spend more money, probably because they felt they had something to prove. However, the trend was reversed at lower-end retailers where poor service drove customers away. Radio icon Casey Kasem has gone missing. The legendary radio personality is best known for his nationally syndicated countdown show, American Top 40.
Thank you, and hello again, everybody. Welcome to America's Top 10. First off, let's check the action on the Billboard Pop Singles Chart and run down the 10 biggest hits this week. Leaping in at number 10 with their 6th Top 10 hit.
That was Casey from a few years ago. He hosted the radio program from 1970 to 1988 and again in 1998 before retiring in 2009. Kasem also lent his recognizable voice to the character of Shaggy from Scooby-Doo for 40 years. Last week, the 82-year-old, reportedly worth $80 million, vanished following a visit by his children at a local hospital. He reportedly suffers from a form of dementia that has left him unable to speak. The latest drama in an ongoing family battle between Kasem's 3 adult children and his second and current wife, Jean Over. Access to their father with more on this case and on the empire left behind is TV correspondent and the host of Lieberman Live with Howard Stern on Sirius, John Lieberman. John, thank you for joining us.
Andrew, thanks for having me.
So this isn't exactly a traditional kidnapping case, is it? I mean, the Boko Haram haven't taken Casey Kasem. This is a family battle, isn't it?
Well, that's right. And this really, Andrew, is the definition of sad, because you are essentially talking about a custody battle over a senior citizen who is suffering from dementia. And as you mentioned, the stakes are extremely high here. You're talking about an $80 million to $100 million fortune that's on the line. And this is really nothing new in terms of this tug of war between the kids and their stepmother, Casey Kasem's wife, except now you truly have a situation where Casey Kasem cannot be located, and that is the real concern right now.
So what do you think is going on here? Where a judge, I understand, has ordered that he be found. Somebody knows where he's found, where he is. I take it it's his current wife, Jean.
Well, that's right. I mean, the speculation is that his current wife knows where he is. The problem is the teeth in the law at this point. So, for example, this afternoon we do expect, afternoon West Coast time, for Casey Kasem's daughter to file a missing persons report. That all of a sudden will upgrade this in terms of law enforcement activity, because to this point no law enforcement has been looking for Casey Kasem. It's been strictly a civil matter, and yes, the judge said, please, I want to know where he is, but there's no teeth in that. There's no real threat, because the judge set another hearing for June 20th, and really there's not going to be any contempt of court until then. That being said, if his daughter does follow through and file this missing persons report, now all of a sudden you have the FBI and local police at the very least on the lookout. But Andrew, as you know, there are so many missing persons cases that are open at any given time. 25,000 in California alone right now.
John, let's talk about who Casey Kasem is for those who are not all that familiar. Long before Ryan Seacrest, he invented the radio countdown in many ways, did he not?
Oh, he did. You're talking about a legend. I mean, there is no other way to characterize what Casey Kasem has meant to radio. I mean, from the American Top 40 countdowns, so many kids, in fact, Andrew, know him as the voice of Shaggy on Scooby-Doo. He had his last broadcast in 2009, but the incredible thing about Casey Kasem is, his career spans so many different decades, so many different generations of people grew up as fans of Casey Kasem. And so it was sad enough to see his health deteriorate. He kind of quietly retired in 2009, but now to actually have this tug of war in his family and to not know where he is. And Andrew, I should point out quickly, there is a chance that he's even out of the country, which would complicate things even further when you're talking about extradition and the like.
Who gets his money right now as far as we know?
That is the multi-million-dollar question. So judges have ruled on each side of this. As of this very second, that issue's still up in the air, because what this judge essentially ruled just last week was that Carrie, his daughter, is her father's temporary caretaker, but he did not rule on what becomes of the fortune yet.
Okay, John Lieberman with the Lieberman Live on the Howard Stern Show on Sirius Radio. Thank you so much, John.
Thanks, Andrew.
Okay, hopefully we will find him soon. For everyone who grew up with Casey Kasem. Ahead, a real-life billionaire brawl over a woman makes two media moguls our favorite people of the day. You're watching Arise Exchange.
If I was building my own news network, I think I'd want broad, in-depth knowledge of important issues throughout the world.
I would want to recruit a fairly diverse staff that had different life experiences before they came to news.
We want to see how we can help ourselves and help benefit other people, and not just see what's up with the celebrities and where they're going and traveling and buying this and buying that.
If I were to build my own news network, it would certainly have to reflect a diversity of culture, because that's the global situation, that's the global reality.
I would probably bring a lot of personal stories, really personal stories from the leaders of all countries.
If I was to build my own news network, I would just have people from all over who are very connected and diverse.
Arise News, every culture, every angle.
Time now for our favorite person of the day, when we pick one person or people who grabbed our attention and not for the right reasons. Today, our favorite people are two Australian billionaire media moguls who got into a fist fight and a brawl over, you guessed it, a woman. Not just any woman, however, this woman, Victoria's Secret model Miranda Kerr, who is apparently worth fighting over. Say so? David Gingell and James Packer, who own various media properties, ended up duking it out and rolling around on a Sydney sidewalk this past weekend. The two are lifelong friends, you could tell, and apparently Gingell was angry about how Packer was treating Packer's estranged wife, whom he left so he could date Kerr, who apparently left actor Orlando Bloom so she could date Packer. Get it? Gingell says he was at fault for the sidewalk tussle, saying if he hadn't shown up at Packer's home angry, it would never have happened. Meantime, both say they are still friends. You wonder. Packer owns Consolidated Press Holdings, a large Australian newspaper company, and Gingell is the CEO of Australia's 9 television network. It's unclear if either media company provided coverage of their boss's embarrassing display of machoism. So for letting a woman get between lifelong friends, even so briefly, David Gingell and James Packer are our favorite people of the day. Coming up, how to turn your house into a movie set and the money you can make on it. You're watching Arise Exchange. Stay with us.
On Arise Review, we take an in-depth look at the week's top stories. You'll hear from some of the best analysts in the world on a wide range of topics. Here are some highlights from our last show.
I would not call them protesters because I believe, as many other Ukrainian people do, that these people are actually Russian special forces and Russian militaries.
So the way that the state has gone about this case, and prosecutor Harry Nell, whose nickname is actually the Bull Terrier for being so ferocious with his cross-examination, even though we've seen all this fierce cross-examination in court, what it comes down to is trying to make Oscar Pistorius' story seem less believable for the judge.
If the new president, which supposedly is going to be the army leader, is going to claim to have some credibility, they need to free journalists. You cannot have free and fair election without free press.
I'm Julian Phillips. Catch Arise Review every Sunday at 11 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time and 1500 GMT, only on Arise News.
In tonight's Corner Office, homeowners have found a way to make big bucks by renting out their homes for movies and video shoots across the nation, sometimes pocketing up to $20,000 for a one-day shoot. At my apartment. Our next guest made a name for herself by creating a company that finds these homes and other ideal locations for her clients. We welcome Debbie Regan, president of Debbie Regan Locations. Debbie, this is kind of fascinating because when you watch movies, they're really not often on movie sets anymore. They are actually in people's homes. So how does your business work? Who comes to you and how do you make a match?
I'll often get either an email or a phone call or a text, and someone will say, Debbie, we are looking for a white kitchen.
And these come from location scouts of movies and television shows.
Yeah, location scouts, producers, photographers, photo assistants. It could be from a number of people.
Okay, and what's the next step then? You have a database?
I have a database of over 6,000 properties. Most of it categorized, so if someone wants a white kitchen or a kitchen with an island sink or a cooktop in the middle so they can do the cooking shows, I have those categorized.
How do you go out and find these homes to begin with? Because people may not think that this is a possibility, may not want to do it for a variety of reasons. So how do you find individuals and say to them, hey, I can put your house in the movies?
More often than not now people find me, or it's their friends have, I've been referred by my friend who had a shoot, and then I'll add them to our database. But I always say if somebody can't stand if a plumber is coming to fix their sink and they're all flipped out about it, then
not
I think,
for them.
No, and I don't twist anybody's arm.
What kind of business is this for you? Is this basically enough business to make it a full-time business?
It's more than full-time. Every day, I'm checking emails. Mother's Day, I worked on a couple of jobs. I do whatever it takes to close the deal.
Any special trend of what movie location shoots are looking for these days? Or is it?
Well, no.
It just varies, depends on the
they
film.
they like those white Pottery Barn style kitchens.
Mm-hmm.
They do like that. They like that clean Pottery Barn look. I think more often than not. A couple years ago, they were asking more about that 70s look. But now,
I wonder, do they go in there and rearrange everything? Do they go in there and make it, if it's a 1970s movie, they're going to put lava lamps around? Is that
they sure will. Like we recently booked a Martin Scorsese movie that Mick Jagger's co-producing, and I know Olivia Wilde is in it, and that is taking place in the 70s. So they want things to either already be 70s or they will make it look that way.
And your typical shoot day looks like? I mean, is it a one-day event? Is it a week event?
Could be less than one day. Sometimes they'll be in one location part of the day and then they'll move to another location. So that would be a half a day. But a half a day in the film business is like 6 hours.
Sure. And what about television shows and regular series, for example? And I mean, especially in New York, you watch these series and they're in and out of different homes all the time.
We work on them. Okay. We just recently had, like Believe. As I was in the green room, I was working on The Leftovers, a new TV show. We just had Person of Interest. We've had Elementary. The Good Wife, a lot of the different TV, Law and Orders.
And what, how much can a homeowner earn from this, and what factors into how much they can earn?
A lot of times I'm given a budget, and I will try to back into that budget. Sometimes people will ask me for absolutely the impossible, like a free location at a $20 million townhouse. It just doesn't work.
Is there a rate card that you work with the homeowners, or is it constantly a negotiation back and forth?
There are some ballparks for average things, but a lot of times it's back and forth. And are they only using the common areas of the house? Do they need bedrooms too? Well, if they only use the first floor, then I can give them this. I just now was working on a Virgin Mobile job in the green room, and they were asking about roof access. So the property owner said, well, for a little extra money, we can work that into the deal.
From the time that someone contacts you to the time that the deal is done, what is the average time frame that these location scouts look at? And I take it they're also looking at multiple properties at once.
Yes, they are. It could be, my record was actually a Hillary Clinton commercial where we got the call around 3:30 and they were in the house by 6 o'clock that night. And that was when we first went like digital, and that was pretty cool. And then, but sometimes on feature films you get a lot of lead time. Like the Scorsese and this other movie that we're working on, a James Franco movie, The Adderall Diaries. We got a lot of lead time. It's just how they work. Commercials, less lead time. Photo shoots.
Do you have some homes that are sort of frequent customers here, or is it a one and done because it's been on something that no one's going to do it again?
Sometimes a scout will say, hey, where we had that XYZ job? I want to go back there for this other job. Or it didn't work for that, but now I'm working on this other job. And also I have to say I have a sign in my office that says, because nice matters, ! And I absolutely put nicer homeowners in for more jobs.
And do you communicate that to the crew as well in the movies? Be nice, this is someone's home?
Well, I do kind of have it like both ways that I want the property owner, and it could be a business, it could be a homeowner, it could be, a school, a warehouse, whatever. We use all different kinds of things for locations. But I do want both sides happy, and then I'm happy.
Okay, Debbie Regan. So people should look you up if they want their home on television movies. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming in. Tomorrow on Arise Exchange, the business of Nollywood. Why industry insiders say African films are the next big thing. Let's take a look at the markets again. Day down arrows across the board. Triple-digit losses for the Dow Jones Industrial Average. I'm Andrew Schmertz. Thanks for watching Arise Exchange. See you tomorrow.